dope.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
We're talking about time travel tonight. So give me your thoughts on, is it possible? Is it something that's not possible?
Wait, what show are we on?
This is Rufus the Villain.
Oh, okay.
Whoa. Anyway, yeah, so in my mind, if you were like Bill and Ted style, if you were to travel back, wouldn't that, like, oh, here's the thing. Oh, dude, this is such a, there's a word there. It's, if you were to travel back, change something, and then have the knowledge of that, it's a paradox. It's a paradox. So like, if you were to travel back in time and change something, would you even actually have the knowledge after the fact that you traveled back in time and changed that exact sequence? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I mean, I've always seen it as kind of a, not really a farce, really. I mean, because to me, I've always delved with on the lines of, okay, say you change something. Now, this also has to do with multidimensionalism.
Right, and we're going to talk about that as well.
Because think about it. Okay, you change something in one timeline. Now, that timeline goes forward. It goes in one singular direction. Now, if you change something, wouldn't it technically you just being altering the timeline itself? Not the timeline itself, but where your position is in what timeline, in what dimension.
That's the hard part.
Right, so the line being linear, stays on a line. What changes is your placement on the layers of the line. So
would you retain knowledge of previous timelines?
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. The you in the timeline that didn't experience that continues on, never experiencing that. The you on the timeline that did experience that, and that's what it is. So like you the timeline of the you that continued on never experiencing that time travel continues on as though nothing has ever changed.
Okay.
The you that experienced that time travel has moved to another parallel
plane of existence.
Yeah, or timeline.
Timeline.
You've moved on to another dimension, as it were, that is parallel to the previous dimension, where most of the things are the same, except for the experience and actions that happen within that.
I like that take on that, because if you think about, like, you remember Tony, you might have some input on this, the Flashpoint paradox, to where Barry Allen goes back in time and like changes this like one little thing, and that changes the whole way things play out. Like, there's so many movies, so many books that talk about going back in time and changing, like Back to the Future, changing one little thing, and everything changes. It's like in my case, like, say, hey, if I went back in time and pushed myself to like go into school, where would I be? Stuff like that, you know what I'm saying?
Well, think about this then. I mean, if you want to talk about basically utilizing the timeline and basically using a track switching mechanism via
I like that analogy. I like that.
Where you basically switch tracks onto a new timeline. Now, I think it's a really hard thing to debate, because one, no one's been able to actually do it yet.
Right.
So there's no basis.
There's no proof
there's
in either
nothing
direction
for it to really work off of as fact. Now, which is fun though, because I mean, you talk about a lot of these theories. Now,
there has been a couple of recent experiments, and
are you talking about like on the quantum level?
Yes, where molecules have literally been in more than one place at one time.
That's a multiverse thing.
Well, yes, they're appearing in two places at once. It's the same piece of matter. It's a very small piece of matter, and the thing about it is it's limited to. It's limited to the tools we have to measure.
Right, like with super colliders.
So even
and stuff
within
like
that, it's still pretty limited, but it's showing that there can be something in two places in the same timeline, and it's the same thing. It's the same
crazy.
Molecule. But how far did it move, and how small is the measurement of timeline? So
E equals MC square, motherfuckers.
So when you're talking microverse and macroverse type stuff, we're really limited to our tools that we have to measure it with. There's lots of legends and lore and intellectual exercises that can kind of ascertain multidimensionality, but there is some interesting scientific studies and experiments being done on being in more than one place at one time, and therefore time travel.
Yes.
Because if you can be in more than one place at one time, you're literally bending time to be into distant places.
The one thing I want to bring up is like, okay, say when you're in outer space and E equals MC square, like you actually experience, if you're in a spacecraft, you actually experience more time, because I'm not a scientist or a physicist, but when you're in space, you actually experience more time dilation than actually being on Earth.
It's the opposite.
Did I have it backwards?
Yes, you don't age.
Okay.
The more you're in space, because the rotation of the and again, I'm not
Like,
I'm
yeah.
not 100% on the science of it, but I think it has to do with your experiencing time, days and nights.
You're right. Okay.
And it has to do with how fast the thing is that you're on
Right,
is moving
right.
along with you.
See,
Well,
that's
go
one
ahead.
effect, but then you also have, was it the way that it affects your bone density as well?
Well, yeah.
Yes,
Well, and that
yes.
actually has to do with the
gravity.
Well, the gravity, but also, I mean, it's more a factor of the.
I'm looking up the speed of light right now.
that people are housed in when they're in space, and also re-entry, and like the weightlessness, experiencing weightlessness for so long. It's like being in a bed, basically. Even though you're doing exercises and things like that, your body naturally exercises just by having to support itself under gravity.
Right.
And when it doesn't have that, your bones can kind of drift out of joint and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So
Well, being in space really does affect the body. Like zero G really does affect, like it affects the vascular system.
we are terrestrial beings.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be floating in zero gravity.
So I looked up. While we were talking the speed of light. I don't even know how to say this number, so I'm just going to read it out. 2,999,792,458 m/s.
No,
Is that miles per second? That might be miles per second. But the speed of light would have to, if you were to time travel, speed. I'm sorry to go back to Back to the Future, but speed would probably have something to do with it. It's like why the Flash could travel time. And like speed is, I think, our ultimate limiter as far as like having the technology to move through timeline.
Well, the thing is, though, in the case of, like, say, Back to the Future, the engine of the DeLorean is actually just the catalyst for the actual the flux capacitor. That's where all the work begins, and I'd be willing to bet that that's going a lot faster on the inside of that core than 88 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think that's a cool fucking concept, though, to take a DeLorean and turn it into a
time machine.
I've always loved those cars.
Here's a question that I've been thinking about since before we started the episode. I want to ask you guys individually, what timeline and place would you have if you had the chance? Where would you go? Where would you be? All in history. Like, I know we have nostalgic stuff from like when we were kids, but like the entirety of history, where would you go? I have my answer. My answer would be feudal Japan.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't really have much of a desire to even experience a different time frame. I've experienced throughout my life. I've already experienced some of the coolest shit that I could ever fathom, and it's still got, it's still going. So I mean, why go visit, something that's already happened when shit's already happened?
Well, it's a thought experiment, as they call it.
Oh no, I get your point.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it before, but I mean, I couldn't give you a good answer on that one now.
Well, I respect that, and for me, it would be, like I said, would be like feudal Japan with like the kimonos and the top knots and all that stuff. Like that would be an awesome time for me to like walk around and be like, whoa.
Well, if somebody like you was walking around in feudal Japan, you would be executed pretty quickly.
Depends on who the daimyo is.
That's right. That's right. A white guy covered in tattoos would be like, no.
If you want to talk about like, was it pre Toyotomi and what's the Tokugawa?
Tokugawa.
You know, that foreigners were a dime a dozen. Over there.
That's true. That's true.
So there.
And it's kind of amazing. Like it's kind of amazing. We did a show on this a couple weeks ago, but the weird thing about the samurai is their big downfall was gunpowder because they didn't want to like move forward and embrace this technology.
Well, it shows what the drawbacks really on isolationism is. I mean, that's
well, their big thing was honor.
They had a lot of dynamics to their culture. I mean, honor being definitely one of the biggest.
Yeah, Bushido.
But I mean, I could actually, to a degree, I can understand the need for a level of isolationism.
Oh yeah,
especially if you're in a country where the major warring states had been in a feud for God knows how long. I don't even.
Oh
remember.
Yeah, I think it was almost 1,000 years.
So I can understand. It's like
all the way into the Ming Dynasty.
Let's close our doors to any outside influence while we fix our shit.
I'd have to agree with that. But like, maybe think about how awesome it would be to walk around, like, as ourselves, like walk around like the Babylonian era and like ancient Babylon.
See, I wouldn't want to walk around as myself in any timeline more than like.
Say you didn't have to walk around as yourself.
Well, the thing is that.
Because we're getting into the multiverse thing here.
Well, no.
Like, if you were able to go back and just be somebody that was there.
The thing is from our perspective that's so separated from those timelines, we don't know how to physically act.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And you stand out like a sore fucking thumb.
Yeah, just by the way you stand.
Just by your posture, the way that you talk, the way that
try to shake somebody's hand.
Do make eye contact or don't make eye contact. It's challenging in other parts of the world in this timeline.
You're right.
And to go to a foreign place in a foreign timeline,
just as a snap of the finger and be there.
The potential for deadly hazard encountering other humans is high.
You're right. You're 100% right, because
that is a really good point, dude.
Because like you could what you think about like today, if you were just yourself and was able to have a time machine, step in, snap a finger, and just be there, you would have to know etiquette. You would have to know etiquette.
Basically.
Like, think about going, like, not even that far back to the Victorian era.
And so
you would have to know
here's
etiquette.
the thing, is you might intellectually know etiquette, but your body language doesn't know the etiquette.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
You would have to practice at it.
Yeah, you would.
To
even come close to fitting in.
To even pass off as not being a fucking weirdo.
Like, where's this guy? And here's the thing is, like, I've had a lot of people when I've even talked to Tony about this. So say all of a sudden you were in the Mongolian era, and you had an AK-47, like, you would be able to take over shit. I'm not getting into that.
For at least a few rounds.
Until the clip was gone.
I was gonna say there's a lot of Mongolians.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm making a point. I'm talking about not taking back technology, just being there. Like, ancient Macedonia, ancient Japan. I think that'd be awesome to just like physically witness that with your own eyes. Like,
if you were to be able to do it from an outside perspective without having to have any kind of physical interaction with them, then I think that'd be a pretty awesome.
I guess that's maybe where
I
guess that's maybe what I'm saying. Just being there and just on your own feet, walking around, being there, maybe not interacting. I guess.
So here's a question that kind of relates to modern technology and the possibility of some sense of time travel. Is if there was a augmented reality program that you could put on, and an actual physical drone, let's call it a physical thing, that they were able to send into another timeline as an observer, and you could walk around in your AR suit in your living room.
I dig that.
And actually experience other timelines through a micro drone, something the size of a fly.
Right. Be a fly on the wall.
Going to different places in timelines, something like
So
that. So would you consider that time travel? Because you physically aren't traveling.
But you have a device that is doing this.
You have a device, a particle, whatever it is.
Like a particle, yeah.
Well, I mean, it'd probably be larger than a particle, but something that's very, very small that is a transmitter to an AR device, screen, headset, whatever.
So you're piggybacking on my question, which I will continue the question. If you could do that, like what Chad is saying, be an observer of an era, a time, what would you observe? What would you watch?
I wouldn't really. I'd have a hard time limiting it to something because.
Well, that's the question, man.
In my mind, it would be as easy as downloading a new game on your Xbox or whatever. It's like, well, I'm gonna go check out 1700s Italy.
Well, how cool would it be to watch the formation of Stonehenge, something like that? Like have a physical understanding of like how that came to be, or like even Easter Island, just like something like that.
Well,
the pyramids, man.
The other thing is when you're getting to that level of space-time bending, why limit it to the planet Earth? There you go. Or at times, like you can go to any place, really.
Well, that kind of brings my mind to our other subject tonight is a multiverse. Just us sitting here right now doing this in 7,000 different ways, in an infinity different ways. Chad's sitting over there. I'm sitting here. Like how different it could be.
The joys of quantum physics.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Like think about. Do you know anything about string theory?
I've read on it a little bit.
String theory is really interesting. That's they also call it the Big Bang theory.
Those two things are not connected.
Yes, they are.
No, Big Bang theory is
no, dude. Yes, they are. It's let me elaborate. So string theory is that you have they call them membranes or brains, and they vibrate and move. The people listening can't see my hands waving, but when these in particular brains or membranes touch each other, they bang. It's the bang. It's
that's not the Big Bang theory.
Yes, it is.
No, the Big Bang theory is basically a point in space where a bunch of vapors and gases came together to form a chemical reaction.
From the head of a pin.
Which is basically the formation of the universe. I have my own theories on this, but that's basically what the Big Bang theory is. It's a theory that's how the universe itself has expanded and was created.
Right. Well, I'm mostly pulling from I forget that guy's name is Mushuto. He's an astrophysicist. He talks about brain theory and membrane theory. His idea is that the Big Bang was the membranes coming together, combining particles, and then exploding. That's his idea. He's I'm sure you've seen him.
No, I know who you're talking about, but that could also be, interpreted as a bunch of gases coming together
Dude,
the chemicals themselves banging together.
There's no way that we have any idea to like completely explain it.
Well, the fact of the matter is that we don't know, and I mean shit. I don't. It's cool to know, but at the same time, I don't know. It distracts me from a lot of things that are going on right now, which I don't know. I just get entertained with more.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, however it was created, I'm just glad it was.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad something happened. That's the big thing in Buddhism. Like I'm a practicing Buddhist. Like there's no like philosophication of like how it started. It's just like we're happy it's here.
It's here. It is.
We're happy it's here.
But time travel, on the other hand, I mean, I've always been fascinated with it just because of the types of effects it has, not only on a time level, but also the physical aspects, how it could affect a person physically, mentally. being able to move forward and backwards, and how it would affect it. Now, would you then be able to stay on the same timeline?
Well,
if
you
were to
would
go
have
forwards.
You would have a responsibility to keep the timeline intact. You would have a responsibility for that, just because of like the way things like lined out. Here's a weird thought experiment. So, okay, let's talk about 1940s Germany. If you had the opportunity to influence Hitler, would you?
Now there's too many variables that go with that.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why I always thought that, man, human beings as a species, I don't think, especially at this point, are not anywhere near ready to handle time.
We don't have any understanding of.
Well, it's not just the understanding of it; it's the moral responsibility that goes in with it.
Exactly.
Now, you get people that not necessarily for malicious gain or anything like that, but they want to say alter something in their own personal timeline.
Right.
What would you do if you had the choice to make that left and win the lottery?
Well,
or
it's just
instead
like
go
it's just
right
like
and
it's
get
just
into that
like
accident.
It's just like Marty buying the almanac.
Yeah,
It's
but it has so many negative implications that could go with it. So many possibilities of it going wrong, not just for himself, but anybody even not even associated with it. That's
Biff.
right.
Biff.
I mean, I don't think human beings are capable of that type of responsibility.
Not yet, at least. Not yet, at least. So, like, where my mind goes with this is like interstellar. I'm going to say this properly. Interstellar space travel, because you're going to have to deal with. At that point, you're going to have to deal with actually moving through space and the time frame that takes, and who knows, there might be quantum time flux type things to deal with when you go to planet. You're like, yeah, do you get what I'm saying?
Well, if you're going to planet, but what if you're moving through time in the same planet?
So we're talking about warp at this point.
You're talking about warp at this point.
What I'm getting at is like moving. Okay, so say if you can fold space, just like the whole analogy of an ant on a string, and then you bring your fingers together.
And kind of like what they do in Dune.
Yes. So would that change things as far as like contact with the planet? Like, would you feel like that? Hey, we're more advanced, that we were able to do this jump? You get what I'm saying?
No.
Like, okay, so say like Earth, say some civilization came to us and they were able to jump through space.
Mm-hmm.
Would they be with their whole thing is would they look down on us, or would they share it with us, or because I'm getting into the technology part of it. That's where my mind's going.
That's up to really the type of how the species functions.
Yeah.
It all depends on what their mental state is.
And it also depends on who you consider us.
Elaborate.
So if they share it and make contact or share that with some beings on the planet, doesn't mean that it's you.
Oh,
doesn't mean that it's your tribe or your species.
So
or
on that note,
they came and showed a gerbil how to fold
exactly
space.
on that note, would it be morally obligated to share it with the entire planet? I wish you guys could see Chad. He's
So-
like,
How is an ant gonna share its values and quality of life with you?
Okay.
How is an ant gonna communicate how it time travels, if it does?
I get what you're saying. What I was getting at was, okay, say a spacefaring species showed up, and say they went to the Guatemalans.
So basically, they make contact with a human.
That's what I'm. Yeah. That's the very, very layman way I'm gonna go at it.
But what I'm saying is, an alien, right? Even an advanced something that has figured out space, time travel, whatever. How is it going to know how to communicate with you any better than an ant knows how to communicate with you?
What a good question.
It might be sharing all of the fucking wisdom in the universe in its own language, and you're just too dumb to understand it.
I fucking love that. I love that. Like, could you imagine getting this information and it just being like it being like something you could never understand.
Well, maybe you do get all of the information you ever needed, but
what if you have to do
just-
ayahuasca first?
maybe. But that's what I'm saying, and
I'd do it
that ties
anyways.
into that ties into multidimensionality. We might be getting bombarded with messages on how to
All day.
to do that all day long, but we're not in that frequency to receive it, and so
Dude, Chad.
you don't even hear it. It doesn't even come in as static because your brain isn't built to receive that message.
Dude.
Infrasound, man.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, and it's just like your brain isn't meant to receive ant pheromones, so you don't know what an ant colony is doing just by the nature, but other ants do. You know, and so there's other means of communication that can be very complex and very strategic and all that has nothing to do with language, and it has nothing to do with how you think intelligence works.
That's amazing. Because think about in the entirety of the universe, maybe some species communicate through body language, maybe some through telepathy, maybe through pheromone. It's kind of an amazing concept.
Or some sort of inception, or
right?
Yeah, kind of invasion of the body snatcher sort of thing, but in a non-destructive way to the host, right? So maybe there's an inception into a being where it automatically adopts that being's mannerisms.
Symbiosis.
Well, and you see this with fungi in the
I knew this.
That's
I
fine.
knew where you were going with that.
in the
That's
insect
fine.
world.
Because I'm going to bring up Bigfoot somehow.
So cordyceps mushrooms will infect an ant, and that ant will carry around the spores inside of its body, infecting it, and it actually releases sexual pheromones.
Is that the case where it actually grows out the top of their head?
Yes, eventually. But they start releasing extra sexual pheromones to attract other ants. They climb to the highest point that they can get to. They die, and the mushroom pops out of their neck, basically.
That's fucking amazing.
To infect other ants, because the pheromones that they left behind are going to cause other horny-ass ants to go chasing after it. And it got on the highest point, so there's more chance for the spores to blow downward.
God damn it, that's cool.
And that's a being in a way. Fungi, it's closer to animal than it is to plant, and it's incepting a host, an ant, and using that to spread itself. And so it's giving the ant the message
Crazy.
to get to the highest point that it can get to, and it's also giving the ant release these pheromones to get more of your friends to come.
Come on.
So that's the thing about alien life form, or the theory of that.
That's
as far as how it would interact with whatever species it came across. It's not like they're gonna come out of the spaceship and say, "Take me to your leader."
Take me to your leader.
Like the concept of a leader might be completely just
foreign.
Well, just retarded.
Right.
You know, when you get to that level of
consciousness
or collective thought, or because when you get to that place of time travel and space travel, things get really fucking weird, and things get really small and short. Like language, you don't use it. There's just data.
Right.
And it's vibration. It's not a physical metal spaceship that looks like a weather balloon. You know, it's I think something else completely.
Well, and that makes my mind go to like what life on other planets would be, because we wouldn't, it wouldn't be on the same what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it wouldn't be on the same like criteria that we have. There could be sulfur-based life forms. There could be methane-based life forms. Like you think about the planet Titan or the moon Titan. They have sulfur oceans. That's amazing. And there's speculation that there's aquatic, quote-unquote, aquatic creatures there in a sulfur ocean.
Now, where did they? When did they start? What did they have to base that off of?
It was a satellite called I can't remember the satellite, but it took pictures of Titan and took took basic like chemical compositions of the planet, and there's sulfur oceans there.
Yeah, but what about the like aquatic life? How
It's speculation, dude. It's all speculation. Just because of like like hey, there's liquid methane.
Probably precursors to life, certain enzymes and stuff like that.
Well, they're running the numbers in chemicals.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And probability.
That's probably what it is.
Well, if you think about it, for Earth to have the only life in the universe, pardon the pun, it's an astronomical waste of space. There's no mathematical way that we are the only place.
I would definitely agree with that, but the other thing is, I think most people have a really narrow view of what constitutes
life. Yeah.
We're a lot more primitive than we think we are.
I would have to agree.
And I think life can be something that we don't honestly have
Even understand what it is.
Well, we understand certain parameters of quote unquote life.
It's breathing, eating, and reproducing is basically what life is.
Yeah, in a raw, essential way, because like bacteria is life,
Right. But it eats, breathes, and reproduces.
right? But I think that there's other means of life that we can't measure.
What? Yeah. Yeah.
Or can't fully measure. We can measure their absence or their ripple effects, but we can't quite pin down a lot of weird shit.
Are you talking about quantum space? Like when something's like alive, it takes up quantum space?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
part of it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying what we consider life. I don't think that is the when you're talking in the entire universe, the entirety
We're
of
waxing
everything.
philosophical right now.
I don't think that you can limit that to the things that we can measure,
I would have to agree.
because there's so many possibilities out there that like what we might consider life or even intelligent life. What do you consider intelligence? Like
Dude.
what a human being considers intelligence might at a certain level be counterintelligence or like really, really primitive thought. Like
I like that.
as much as we like look at lots of wild animals as far as they're meeting their needs of how am I going to eat today, what's my group, whether they're herd animals or pack animals, like they have social structures and all of that to worry about, but
pecking order.
yeah, well, and all animals have kind of different things going on. So there's something there, but I don't think that that's the real parameters of life. That's what we think of on the planet.
How do you feel about on the same thing what you were talking about? How do you feel about emotion? Like emotion, would you say emotion is a completely human thing?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, definitely animals have sense of emotion. That's without question.
Like sadness, happiness.
Well, and like those are human names for those
Exactly.
emotions, but I think that animals absolutely have emotion and have deep thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. But, does a tree? Maybe.
I would be hard pressed to say that trees don't have that.
Yeah.
I would be hard.
Does a mushroom or a fungal mass? Probably.
They're more
They're smart as fuck.
because what's the phrase from Lord of the Rings? They came with their axes, smashing, hacking, chopping.
Are you talking about the ants?
Yeah. How's it go? How's it go?
Oh, I don't know.
Chopping, smashing, hacking, burning. Like it's a plant having an emotion on a planet, which I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the essential. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, like intelligence is a really weird
It's
topic.
That's the thing is, it's all relative when you really look
Exactly. It's
It's all
relative is
relative.
the perfect word.
Like look at an ant colony compared to Tucson, Arizona. Like an ant colony, they completely communicate through pheromone colony. How would you go about saying how an ant colony communicates? It's pheromones, actions.
Yeah.
You know, like a human colony is more based along the lines of like culture, but ants don't have that. Ants don't have culture.
Well, they might.
We don't know.
They have agriculture.
Yes, they do.
They,
Yes, they do.
They farm bits of leaves and cooperate and store them and then inoculate them with another material to grow fungus that they eat. So, in a way, they have culture. It's
They have
just
a
culture
social
that-
hierarchy.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So that's the thing is our intelligence doesn't recognize their intelligence. We say they're small and they're ants and they're weird and complicated, but
And they're in my Cheerios.
Yeah.
They're in my kitchen.
and hopefully not your mouth
No mouth ants.
or your juice box.
Oh, my Capri Sun.
Oh, the ants ruined my juice box.
They made it cloudy.
Everybody,
Sorry, guys.
everybody listening has no idea what we're talking
There's
about.
an inside joke. But like to keep it going, like I think it's interesting that like you think of like hive minds, like wasps that have a hive mind, ants have a hive mind.
Yeah, but they're very different. And wasps actually don't really have a hive mind.
Really?
They're yellow jackets.
Fuck wasps.
Yellow jackets.
Just saying.
Again, there's a lot of different types of wasps. Now,
No anger there.
Fucking spicy. They're fucking sky jalapenos.
yeah.
So basically, where I want to keep this going is okay. We're talking about time travel, multiverse. At this point, we're talking about consciousness
And bees.
and bees. Do you think the universe has a consciousness? Everybody got quiet. Do you think the universe has a plan? Do you think it has a conscious? Do you think it did things?
If you, as the one experiencing it, wants it to, then it does.
Yeah, if you want to get that far out there, yeah.
Like I just think it's amazing to think about what, like, we're sitting here right now in the studio and we're talking. Could you imagine how many variables had to come together for this to actually happen? As far as like chemistry,
That's just one timeline.
Exactly.
Now multiply that times infinity.
Infinity.
And you have the actual universe.
You know, that'd be freaky if there was
I was like,
that'd be pretty damn cool if there was like a different timeline out there where everybody had nipples on their faces.
Oh, there is.
that and you're a girl and I'm a girl and Chad's a girl and crazy ass shit like that, man.
Man, I've always said this. I would be one ugly chick.
I would hate to see that, Tony.
There would be no excuse for my mustache.
What do you think is the coolest time travel movie?
Time travel movie?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, coolest. I have to go Back to the Future, or I could do. There's a movie actually called Timeline, which is really good. It's actually R.I.P. It's the guy from Fast and Furious, Paul Walker.
Who?
Paul Walker. He died.
Oh, that dude.
Yeah.
Well, the
that
thing
dude.
is, I'm not really into pop culture, so
Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar with names and
Yeah.
faces and
Me too.
who died. Now, if you want to talk about like musicians, then
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
but
Well, okay. On that note, if you could time travel to spend time with any musician, who would it be?
I wouldn't.
No,
No.
You don't want to meet your heroes.
I would not want I wouldn't want my vision of them to be actually affected.
Meet your heroes, man. You don't want to meet.
Well,
your
put it this way: my vision of them and my interpretation of what they do helps me to do the things that I enjoy doing. Now, if that gets changed for me,
right.
that could really fuck shit up.
Time ripples, man. You
I
don't want to mess with the timeline.
I mean, I appreciate it for what it is. Back when I was a kid, I wanted to go change shit and do things and win the lottery and all that fun crap. But then, I don't know.
Well, you still didn't tell me your favorite time travel movie.
That I'm still thinking about that one.
That's a hard one, right?
I've seen a few really fucking good ones.
I have to go Back to the Future. That's all three of them were awesome. That's where I have to go.
Yeah, I'd say Back to the Future is definitely one of my favorites. I love some of the the little TV series movies that Doctor Who's done.
Doctor Who.
Oh God! Then you have your awful movies like the one with Van Damme, Time Cop.
Oh, Time Cop! Dude. I was just thinking about that the other day. Actually, Time Cop was awesome.
Time Cop.
Fucking cheesy '90s action, man.
Yeah. That was his heyday for sure.
What would be your favorite through time '90s aside, like movie genre? Like particularly for me is like early black and white horror.
Wait, what?
Like early black and white horror movies.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, what?
Favorite movie genre?
How did we get on this?
Because I'm asking questions because nobody's talking.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's like with music. I don't have one favorite genre.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have my preferred ones, but like B movies are always fun.
B movies are good. Like
cult movies are great.
I really enjoyed like Army of Darkness. Speaking of B movies,
there you go.
That's good stuff, man. This is my boomstick.
See, that one was awesome. But then it all depends on what my mood is and what's going on. If I have time to watch it.
Yep.
I mean, I'm so heavy into doing so many other things. I don't really. God, I mean, I think was it when I saw you earlier when you showed up? I was watching the latest Mad Max movie.
Fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. Like I was upset with that because Max is like a side character.
Well, I don't know. The way it was written, it just didn't hold my attention enough.
Because Max wasn't why was it called Mad Max? Why wasn't it just called
It had
Furiosa?
I had my gripes with it when it first came out. I mean, it had some really cool scenes, but all in all, I don't think there wasn't enough done with the story to really explain certain parts, to emphasize certain things that the characters are going through. There was too much missing out of the story to really make it a good movie, and also not including enough with Max. And I still have gripes about who they cast. He's a great actor, but I don't.
He was awesome as Venom, dude.
I don't know if he could. I don't think he really pulled off the Mad Max character.
They should have just done an old Mel Gibson.
But then again, that's you got to try to get Mel Gibson. that might not be so easy,
So, like, before we end, we just want to talk about a little bit more of like time travel. Do you think it's possible?
I think the way man goes, I think it can be possible for them to reach it on a level that we kind of fantasize about, but I don't know how long that'll be. With the irony of time.
Yeah, I think we probably already do in a sense, but
well, if we already time travel, we wouldn't know it.
Right. I think it has more to do with sending receivers or information gathering particles. Probes and experiencing that through VR or AR technology. That's probably the way it's going, but I don't know.
Sometimes I wonder, think about, say you look into the future to see what causes or what the effects are from something, or vice versa. You look into the past to see what you could do to prevent a major catastrophe. Now, that would be the timeline. Now, wouldn't, say as an example, you go back in time to try to stop something. Now, by doing that, you inadvertently become the reason that something happened in the first place.
Exactly. That's a crazy paradox with time, like with time travel.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the theory of timelines. The timeline itself never changes. It always has been. It always will be. It goes from line segment to line segment. It's
so
what
Tony was saying is like, say if you travel back to some point to try to change something in the ultimate timeline layout, you you're the reason that shit. Like
Yeah,
turtles,
well, it's
turtles in
basically
time,
like a
dude.
But
form
the
of
thing is that
destiny.
is a different timeline.
Right.
The timeline that you went to go change continued on because you never made it into that timeline again. You jumped to a different timeline.
But the timeline you affected is its own timeline.
Right, and it always has been that.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
So no matter what, say if you try to affect one specific timeline, no matter what you do, it's still gonna have.
You're moving to a different line. The line doesn't change. The outcome of that line never changes. You're just moving to another alternate.
But say,
timeline.
okay, now give an example of this. Say now the hypothetical scenario. Say something explodes.
Mm-hmm.
You go back in time. You do this one specific action. The thing explodes anyways. You go back in time again. You do something different. It still explodes again.
Mm-hmm.
You have the same outcome, multiple ways of trying to solve this issue.
Those are timelines.
Not just multiple, infinite.
Now, there you go. Okay, even better. Now, is that a bunch of little timelines that just specifically intersect at one, not one causation,
Who's to say
but
that?
one specific action?
Who's
Well,
to say
so-
they intersect?
So that, I don't think they intersect. They are parallel timelines. So that instance occurring in all of those timelines is what makes them parallel. But they also,
Oh, okay, no, but now, okay, now I exactly see what you're saying.
like, they're moving in the same trajectory, right? And some things happen in those timelines that make them parallel rather than, going in different directions.
Well, it's like the saying, like we're in the conversation that we're having now. There's an infinite number of us saying the exact same things, but we're wearing different clothes or having different styles of hair,
Or
things
using
like that.
different sentences.
Yeah.
or languages, or
Yeah.
yeah,
We could be sitting here speaking Mandarin.
or
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could be
Klingon.
we could be telepathically communicating with pheromones. There's all of those things, and the thing is nature does that. Like there's absolutely examples in our world of things that communicate in ways that we don't understand, in very complex ways, and just like animals having emotions and timelines, they are lines. They go and go and go. When you change a timeline, you're what's changing, not the timeline. You're moving to a different trajectory.
That's fucking scary, dude. Because you think about, like, if you were to go back and change any little thing in history, it could be this whole, like, I'm going to go back and say, like, Back to the Future. One little thing could change anything. But, like, what Chad is saying is, like, if you change something, that's a completely different line. Like,
There still exists a timeline where you never changed anything.
Exactly.
And there has always been, even before you made the decision to change something, there's always been that timeline where you were going to make that decision and
didn't do
change
it.
it at that time.
It's fucking crazy.
Because it's all infinite, right? There's infinite possibilities. So there's every possible outcome under every possible, what we think of as linear time, every second, or however you want to count it, or however you want to measure it.
Who's to say the way that we record time is like the way any other...
It's not.
Exactly.
It's not.
Like, who would be the first people to, like, really write down time? Would it be, like, the Aztecs?
No.
No. Egyptians?
The Egypts.
Egyptians?
Yeah.
Egyptians?
I think that is something that we can't really answer.
Well, time is definitely a human concept. It's definitely a human concept.
Yeah, but I bet there are...
Because like a fucking mouse, like a house mouse, has no idea what a month is.
Yes, but there are animals that have concept of time, and they definitely have concept of timing.
What do you mean?
How long it takes them to cross from this point to that point, how long it's gonna, their timing has to be precise to survive.
Okay.
And so they
So
have
that gets into like bears hibernating.
Well, what I just said doesn't have anything to do with
Well,
bears hibernating.
well,
Bears hibernating is it's really elemental. I mean, it's more.
Well, they would have
involved.
to have a concept of time of like.
Well,
this
they
is-
don't decide to go to sleep. Their metabolism slows down.
Which is based off of the temperature.
They don't just say nap time.
Nap time.
I had too much honey today. Oh bother.
Oh bother! I've had too much honey. Time to sleep. And for some reason, bears talk like this.
No,
Sorry.
not quite like that.
Oh my god. Sorry.
No, it's
So where were we?
all right. I forgot what I was saying.
Just shouting nap time.
Nap time.
I just had this total image of this bear just walking through the woods and then all of a sudden looking around, standing up and saying nap
Breaking
time.
the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall.
Okay,
Nap time. Oh my god.
I'm gonna go curl up in this hole. I had too many salmons.
So what we were talking about is actually animals having a concept of time.
Right.
Like so you think about like salmon.
So like them having a concept of time, that actually is a completely different thing. It's metabolic. When something goes into hibernation, same thing with reptiles. It gets cold, their metabolism slows down. That's a different thing. But like they have to, like, so if a lion or a cat is waiting in the grass for prey, they have to make a decision of how long am I going to spend waiting here or am I going to move on?
It's half the day I've been under the grass.
Right. So
Yeah.
they have to have a concept of time.
Right.
It's not just like, I'm hungry, so I'm going to run around until I can murder something.
So with my face.
Right. No, they say, well, like, it might be, they have to make the decision of, it might be worth my time to hang out here and wait for something to come along, and then I might be able to snag something up.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so there definitely is a concept of
They have an
time.
idea. They have idea of light and dark, like the sun going down. This is, you think about like nocturnal animals,
Right.
stuff like that. They like what you, piggybacking on what you were saying, like a cheetah on the savannah is only going to spend so much time
Right.
before they are like, I got to move on because I only have this much time.
Right.
To like, the sun's going to go down pretty soon, and do you think they have an idea of like, okay, I've got about this much time before it gets dark?
See, the thing is, I don't think it's measured like the way humans do, but I think that they totally have, and maybe even a better concept of time than what humans have, because they're out there looking at the sun and looking at how long the shadows of the grass are and things like that, and they just know it.
Right.
They know how much time they have in the day, whereas we look outside and like, it's darker now than it was a
Last
few days
month.
ago. Like, what's going on? It's still 6 o'clock on my watch, but it's darker now.
Right. Yeah.
So we're more out of tune with actual time. Actual time is an ironic statement,
Yeah.
but that's our planetary time because of how we measure it.
You
with
get
the
into
sun.
time zones and shit.
But
like
well,
that.
that's just, again, we're always kind of bound by our tools that we use to measure. That's the most basic one, the sun going up and down. That's, and then its trajectory on the horizon. That's how you tell what time of year and what time of day it is.
Actually,
So that's the most rudimentary tool we have, is like, there's this big star in the sky, and there it goes.
there it goes. And I actually saw some stuff on YouTube recently about I forget the guy's name, but he was one of the first people to express mathematically that the Earth is round because of a shadow. Because he would calculate. He put a stick in the ground, and he would calculate. Okay, this is the curve at this point. And then he would have people thousands of miles away, give him the exact calculation of that shadow. So he was like, okay, put these two together, the Earth is round. It was pretty interesting shit,
Yeah.
So
Yep.
thank you guys for recording with me tonight.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. And we'll be talking to everybody soon.
At another time.
Good night.